Is here again, and we are working on track 2 voicing. Currently, we're doing Nyy'xai Fundamentals, and everyone here today is a Nyy'xai, so it happens to also be our unconscious genius, our other. Cool stuff. We are now at the section of Nyy'xai keening and stress lock. So we will start off with you, Mitchell.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot. All right then.
Here's the first question. What's keening? What is stress lock? How can Nyy'xai experience keening and stress lock through the momentum powers? How can Nyy'xai experience keening and stress lock through the modulation powers?
Keening refers to the mechanisms and manifestations of a given motor design when it is being stressed to a high degree, which is healthy and necessary to do sometimes in order to reach one's maximum potential. When keening becomes too intense for too long, it can lead to stress lock symptoms which can be temporary or chronic. The Nyy'xai momentum powers of Ni and Jai can experience keening and stress lock through either being unrefined by any other power or having so much energy built up that it can't be processed by the psyche fast enough. The Nyy'xai modulation powers of Zi and Vi can experience keening and stress lock when they're not strong enough to handle what is being asked of them, or they have become so strong that they start trying to take inappropriate control of the psyche away from momentum.
So, when you are ready. Take time.
Fascinating topic.
Okay, so we're just going to skip the keening of Ni and Jai and focusing specifically on the Z and the Vi. Am I right?
No, there's keening from momentum and from modulation. So momentum will be the Ni and Jai, and modulation the Z and the Vi.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the way it's done is the first paragraph kind of sets the scene in general, and then all 4 powers each get their own full paragraph.
Mm-hmm. All right. Alright, so keening refers to the mechanisms and manifestations of a given motor design when their processors are being stressed to a high degree, and this can be healthy if it's done to help reach one's maximum potential, but if it goes on for too long, too intense for too long, it's going to be stress lock. Through their momentum powers, the Nyy'xai can keen if their momentum just builds up and doesn't ever get refined by another power. And so, or there's just it's just so much that the psyche can't process it fast enough. And then for the modulation, the Z and Vi, that can either be where the Z and Vi are so much energy is being thrown at them and that they can't actually process it fast enough or powerfully enough, or they become so strong they take an inappropriate control away from the momentum powers and put them in a kind of Daryu sort of state.
Got it.
Chronically.
Glenn?
Alright, so for the Nyy'xai, for keening in general, it's anytime a power or the psyche is being tasked in a sort of way where there's going to be some form of stress, there's going to be some sort of a level of intensity where there's going to be some kind of like something that the individual has to deal with as far as like stress and being able to handle that. And this is meant to be healthy, and every mojo is meant to be able to handle stress to a certain degree, and that is referred to, keening, which is just general stress like that. But if it goes on for too long, and it's too intense, it can lead to stress lock, which is more of like the negative side of keening and what it can do. If it's done correctly, it leads to a lot of growth and leads to a lot of it is necessary in order for a person to reach their highest potential. But if it goes on for too long, like I said, it can become troublesome. The Nyy'xai, their Ni and their Zhai, when they use their two momentum powers, it can the proper level of the keening. They can experience keening and stress lock when they're experiencing a lot of uh, influx from their Ni and their Zhai, and that can if that energy is not being capable of being refined fast enough and quickly enough, it can cause the Nyy'xai to start keening in that sense because there's just too much energy and they don't know what to do with it all, I guess. When they're trying to keen and when they experience keening and stress like with their modulation parts of Z and Vi, it can either be to where their Z and their Vi are just simply not strong enough to be able to handle the sort of stress that's being asked of them, the kind of task that's being asked of them, or it's because their Z and Vi is gotten to the point where it's too strong and they're now taking inappropriate control over the entire psyche and the peak pathway past or beyond like the proper ranking of their Ni and their Zhai being momentum and their first and second rank powers.
Correct. Ben, go ahead, jump on in.
Sure.
Yeah, this is just the first beat, so.
All right. Where are we exactly?
Keening.
Yes, Nyy'xai keening and stress lock. First paragraph.
Oh, and here, I'll post the question again for you. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. All right, I'm there. So very first beat.
Yep.
All right. King refers to this. Stress lock. How can Nyy'xai experience king and stress lock through their momentum powers? Through their modulation powers. All right. Shoot forward. So keening refers to when there's an accentuated use of a particular power, and this can be very important and useful in a lot of different situations. However, if it's taken too far, then you go into stress lock territory, which is where the negative implications of your power use start to show up, and you'll need to likely rest a bit afterwards in order to recover from the stress lock from the overuse of a particular power. For the Nyy'xai, they can experience keening and stress lock if their momentum powers of Ni and Zhai or Zhai are not being properly refined by their modulation powers, or they have so much energy built up that that they don't really know what to do with it. Their modulation powers of Z and Vi can experience keening and stress lock when they either do not know how to handle the call to their modulation powers properly, or they become so good at their modulation powers they use it in inappropriate ways, and that will be for stress lock in particular.
Nice.
Boom. All
I
right.
like the way that you put that in your own words. That was really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like because the faster you read it, like the more you kind of go off your own head. Like at least for me, like it's.
No, of course, yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So Mitchell, you'll take lead in this one.
No, I think Ben should go this time, right?
Now let's go back to regular order because we only did one beat, so he'll get the end of this one. Mitchell, what are 3 manifestations of keening for the first source power of the Nyy'xai? What are the characteristics when this keening becomes stress locked? And what are the characteristics when this keening is in a healthy heroic state?
Right. When the Nyy'xai major momentum Ni energy gets really built up, it starts to keen and hyper-cross-contextualizing through fervent fantasizing, then fervent fairy flight, and eventually into a state of dreamscape delirium. If this Ni energy is not processed properly, it can lead to stress-locked versions of the Ni keening, turning into an unhealthy mixture of gullible, scattered, and fickle. However, for the Nyy'xai first-ranked Ni is designed to be heroic, so once it is returned to a healthy state, it quickly regains its open-minded, diverse, and irrepressible higher nature. Okay.
Some key words there.
So 3 manifestation of keening for the first source power of the Nyy'xai, which is Ni in this case, when their Ni energy starts building up into intense levels, is going to be fervent fantasizing, frantic fairy flight, and dreamscape delirium. The characteristics when this keening becomes stress lock are the negative subsignals of the Ni power, and that's are gullible, scattered, and fickle. When this keening is in healthy heroic state, the Ni is returned to its more natural, open-minded, diverse, irrepressible nature.
Got it. Glenn?
All right. So when the Nyy'xai use their Ni for major modulation, and they use their keening to a high degree, it leads into this very hyper cross-contextualizing that the Ni will go through, and it starts off first with yeah, I'm gonna need a little bit more time.
First.
All right, so when the Nyy'xai use their Ni for keening, it leads into 3 different phases of their cross-contextualizing, which is like this hyper hyper version of it, which starts off with fervent fantasizing, then leads into frantic fairy flight, and then eventually into dreamscape delirium. The negative corollaries, which usually pop up when it goes into like the stress lock version of their keening. It's not really keening; it's more like stress lock symptoms, which leads into these symptoms, which can then be noted as for the Nyy'xai when they sort of become gullible, scattered, and fickle. However, when the healthy relationship is restored, it takes on the positive corollaries, which is causes them to become more open-minded, more diverse, and more irrepressible nature.
Got it. Ben, right home?
All right, let's see here. Minded, diverse, and oppressible. All right, so when the Nyy'xai starts to keen, they get into in the beginning they get into a stage of fervent fantasizing, and then frantic fairy flight, and then dreamscape delirium, and those are the three major manifestations. When they go into unhealthy states, you will see that they will their keening will have that goes into gullible, scattered, fickle territory. However, when they are in healthy, heroic states with their keening, they will be open-minded, irrepressible, and um, I can't remember the other one.
Diverse.
Diverse. Is that okay, or should I do it again?
That's,
All right.
we'll let you on that one. We'll try to be tighter
All
than
right.
the next ones. All right. This one, Glenn, you will take lead on.
Sure.
Same thing, but with the tandem power from Nyy'xai.
Right. So when the Nyy'xai minor momentum Zhai energy gets really built up, it starts to keen with an overflow of poignant emoting through their me-time treehouse, then willful wildness, and eventually even into a state of personal purging. If this Zhai energy is not processed properly, it can lead to stress-like versions of the Zhai keening, turning it into an unhealthy mixture of being depressive, deluded, and self-centered. However, the Nyy'xai second rank Zhai is designed to be used heroically, so once it is returned to a healthy state, it quickly regains its humane, innocent, and authentic higher nature. All right. So when the Nyy'xai use their Zhai to a very strong degree, it eventually leads into the keening for their Zhai, and that takes on, which has 3 different phases to it. Which first starts off with their me-time treehouse, and then that leads into willful wildness, and then eventually it leads all the way into personal purging. Now this is all meant to be done heroically, but the stress lock versions of this, when it leads to symptoms that can be picked up and noted, and they tend to be more negative, and they usually make the Zhai appear more depressive, delusional, or not delusional, but depressive, deluded, and self-centered. However, when the Zhai is restored back to being a heroic, which is what it's meant to be, it quickly regains its more authentic, innocent, and humane nature.
Boom. Ben?
All right. When Nyy'xai gets really worked up for the Nyy'xai, they get into a keening state, and that has 3 phases to it of intensity, starting out with me-time treehouse, willful wildness, and personal purging. When Nyy'xai with their Zhai get in unhealthy states with their keening, which is stress lock, they will have the qualities of being deluded, self-centered, and here. I'm just gonna read it again. Just
Gotcha.
You did
Oh, yeah.
you did some nice saves in the beginning, though.
yeah. It's funny how that happens to me. Like, it's like I know I've got it. It's just it feels like it's almost random. Like when it comes in, you know, it isn't, but it feels that way. Where like you'll be waiting for like a solid minute, and then it like comes to you, you know. So.
Hola.
Hola.
Long day. Well, we're gonna kick back after this with some Superman versus Batman.
Really good.
Hey guys.
Nyy'xai.
The Zhai. You guys can have a party, make some popcorn.
Oh, talk about mango craziness. I thought it was pretty nasty. It was actually pretty tasty. You know, like what's it called? Kettle corn,
Oh yeah.
popcorn,
Oh,
Kettle corn? No.
mango,
I've heard of that. Yeah, I don't think I've tried it though. Yeah, what is that?
mango coconut kettle corn popcorn. I was like,
Wow.
Okay.
That is quite the concoction.
Like a little
So you tried it?
It was tasty.
I love
Actually.
mangoes and I love popcorn.
Okay. But on just on the bag, right? I mean, when you look at it, it's like this doesn't seem like it would be tasty, but then you eat it, and it's
know.
like, right?
That means so let's give it a shot, and it turned out to be tasty.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go, Ben? Are we like shutting you out?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Oh no, it's totally fine.
Yes, mango time. It's mango season.
So Nyy'xai, when the Zhai really wells up with energy and they get into states of keening, that is 3 phases to it. First, you have me-time treehouse, then you have willful wildness, and then you have personal purging. In more unhealthy states, when they get into stages of stress lock, that has the qualities of being Zhai being deluded, self-centered, and depressive. However, in more healthy, heroic states, it will in higher states of keening, it will be authentic, humane, and innocent.
Boom. Mitchell, take it home.
Okay, so the three manifestations of keening for the tandem power of the Nyy'xai, that is when it wells up a lot of energy to the point where it's stressful, even like this, or it just takes a lot to process. It's not necessarily stressful, I guess, but that's going to be the me-time treehouse state, followed by willful wildness, followed by personal purging. Then, when the keening becomes stress lock, it can start to turn into some of the more negative subsignals of Zhai, and those are depressive, self-centered, and deluded. And when the keening returns, or is just done in the first place in a healthy heroic state, then it will have its healthier, humane, innocent, authentic qualities.
And humane. Got it. All right. Back to you, Mitchell. I mean, actually, back to you, Ben, for modulation. C. There you go. So, same questions, but for Z.
Oh, nice. When the Nyy'xai monomodulation Z gets overworked, it starts to keen with a cold, calculated urgency through keeping score, then giving public scores, and eventually into a state of taking drastic action. If this Z energy is not processed properly, it can lead to stress-lock versions of the Z keening, turning it into an unhealthy mixture of being brutish, domineering, and callous. However, the Nyy'xai third-rank Z is designed to be used heroically, so once it is returned to a healthy state, it quickly regains its assertive, hierarchical, and rigorous higher nature. When a Nyy'xai Z gets really overworked, they with cold, calculated energy, they get into states of keening with 3 stages. The first being keeping score, then giving public scores, then taking drastic action. In more unhealthy stress-like states, this will have the energy of being callous, brutish, and domineering. And more healthy heroic states of keening, they will be more rigorous, assertive, and hierarchical.
Got it. Mitchell?
Hang on, I've lost the page. Whoops. That was an accident. I think I might have that. All right. So the three manifestations of keening for the third offside power of the Nyy'xai, which is Z, are keeping score, giving public scores, and then taking drastic action. Finally, and then when this keening becomes stress lock, it has the characteristics of the negative subsignals of Z, and those are callous, domineering, and brutish. And then when it's returned to its healthy heroic state, it regains its rigorous, hierarchical, assertive nature.
Got it. Glenn, take us home.
All right, just a question though. The beginning sentence, it says, when the Nyy'xai monomodulation Z gets overworked. That sounds sort of like stress lock in a way. I'm not sure if that's... Wait, is that accurate to say overworked? Because I would think that keening, natural keening, would be more like it's just being worked really well. Overwork kind of implies like a sort of like a negative. I don't know.
I believe I have updated it. In the copy I have now, it says when it gets heavily worked.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
All right then. So when the Nyy'xai use their minor modulation power of Z, and they're using it in a way where it's being heavily worked, it causes the Z to take on sort of keening qualities to it, which first leads into the Nyy'xai keeping score with their Z, and then eventually giving public scores, and then eventually taking drastic action. Now, when the Z monomodulation is when the energy from the Z keening is not being handled correctly, it can lead into negative stress lock symptoms, which are a combination of the Z taking on more of a brutish, domineering, and callous nature. However, it's meant to be done heroically, and when it is restored to that more heroic nature, the more heroic higher nature, it quickly regains its more assertive, hierarchical, and rigorous nature.
Got it. All right, last one for this pitch. And Mitchell, you'll take lead. It is the same set of questions for Vi.
Should I just go ahead then? All right, then when the Nyy'xai major modulation Vi gets overworked, when it gets heavily worked, it starts keying with a hyperfixation on details and practical consequences through pronounced pensiveness, then being absolutely on point, and eventually even with in-depth morbidity reports. If this Vi energy is not processed properly, it can lead to stress lock versions of the Vi keening, turning it into an unhealthy mixture of being rigid, boring, and nitpicky. However, the Nyy'xai fourth rank Vi is designed to be used heroically, so once it is returned to a healthy state, it regains its staunch, unfailing, meticulous, higher nature. Okay. So the three manifestations of keening for the fourth or polar power of the Nyy'xai, which is Vi, is going to be kind of a hyperfixation on details and practical consequences through pronounced pensiveness, being absolutely on point, and in-depth morbidity reports. And when this keening becomes stress lock, it's going to have the characteristics of the negative subsignals of Vi, and that's going to be boring, rigid, and nitpicky. And the characteristics of the keening when it's returned to its more healthy heroic state are unfailing, staunch, and meticulous.
Got it. Glenn?
All right, just a moment. Right, so the Nyy'xai, when they use their Vi in a very heavily way, in a very heavily taxing way, it leads into keening, which takes on 3 different phases, each with higher degrees of intensity, which first starts off with them taking on a very high amount of fixation on details, which then eventually leads into a pensiveness, which is like which causes them to be very absolutely on point.
I think actually the pensiveness is actually the first one in the series.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So
High fixation on details is kind of the general thrust.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, let me try that again then. So the Nyy'xai, when they use their Vi to a heavily pronounced degree, it leads into them taking on their Vi, taking on a sort of a keening process, which has different phases to it as they become more and more fixated on details. And it first starts off with them with a pronounced pensiveness, which then leads into being absolutely on point, and then eventually into in-depth morbidity reports. Now, when this is meant to be done correctly, but when it takes on more of a negative energy because it's not being handled correctly, the Vi can quickly become very rigid, boring, and nitpicky. But when the proper heroic like the way in which it's supposed to be used is regained, it quickly takes on its more positive corollaries, which are meant to be unfailing, meticulous, and staunch.
Got it. Ben?
Okay. So, the Nyy'xai fourth rank polar power of Vi, when it is being heavily worked on, they go into keening states, and those have 3 phases, the first of which being pronounced pensiveness, then they go into being absolutely on point, and then in-depth morbidity reports. When Nyy'xai, with their fourth rank polar power of Vi, go into more unhealthy stress-lock states, they have the distinct negative subsignals that power does of being rigid. I'll have to look at that one again.
Okay.
Boring and nitpicky. Right. Nyy'xai, with their fourth ranked polar power of Vi, when they go into keening with it, there are three stages. The first of which is a pronounced pensiveness, then being absolutely on point, and then finally in-depth morbidity reports. In more unhealthy stress-like states, the polar power Vi will express the negative subsignals of being staunch, not staunch, rigid, nitpicky, and boring. In more healthy, heroic states, however, their fourth ring polar power of Vi will have the qualities of being staunch, meticulous, I can't remember the last one.
Failure is not an option. You got it.
Oh, unfailing?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving on now.
Goodbye, you cannot fail.
We're now going to go into Nyy'xai sensitivity. Glenn, you'll take lead. Here is the first question. Where does the Nyy'xai sensitivity come from? How does Ni relate to this? How does Zhai relate to this? Of what use is the sensitivity?
Right, so Nyy'xai are very sensitive creatures due to their Ni permeability and Zhai vulnerability, with a greater propensity than most emoji designs for being considered a highly sensitive person. Ni abilities like Ni Sixth Sense make the Nyy'xai receptively open and permeable to influences that are often imperceptible to others. Zhai abilities like empathy make the Nyy'xai exposed and vulnerable to feelings and staggering. When this sensitivity is nourished and tended to properly, it gives the Nyy'xai many amazing gifts, such as being highly talented at reading a person's innate nature. Right, so the Nyy'xai get their sensitivity from their Ni permeability and Zhai vulnerability, with a higher propensity than other Mojo designs at being considered a highly sensitive person. Their Ni makes them sensitive because, like for example, with their Sixth Sense, it causes them to be able to take notice of certain impressionistic kind of motifs and patterns and sort of hidden things around them and hidden influences. It causes them to be able to be very receptive to those and be able to take those in. Their Zhai is responsible for their sensitivity, given their empathy and their abilities to be always sort of like with their heart, exposed in a certain way. So they're always they feel that there's a tendency for them to feel very vulnerable, and they have a very strong ability to really process and take sort of things that happen in a very in-depth, personal way, and really take it on a very deep level. When these powers are nourished correctly and properly, it can help the Nyy'xai become very good at learning how to be great emoji readers.
Good. Plus a bunch of other stuff. That's a biggie. Ben, you're up.
All right. The Ni permeability and the Zhai vulnerability gives the Nyy'xai a greater propensity than most other mojos for being a highly sensitive person. The Ni relates to this because with the Nyy'xai's sixth sense, this makes them more permeable to the subtle patterns and influences that many other people would not be able to notice. With their Zhai, they have their Zhai vulnerability, which makes them feel a great amount of personal emotional depth far beyond most people. The one advantage that the sensitivity gives the Nyy'xai is is a great gift for reading mojos.
Got it. Mitchell? No?
The Nyy'xai sensitivity comes from their Ni permeability and Zhai vulnerability. And their Ni relates to this because it gives abilities like the Sixth Sense to be open to picking up influences in the environment that are difficult to see, and that a lot of other people just naturally don't notice or tune out. The Zhai relates to this because the empathy that it has gives the Nyy'xai the ability to process just raw feelings to a depth that and it kind of with the depth and vulnerability that just leaves their Zhai open to being, I guess, impacted and having their buttons pushed and stuff like that. And the sensitivity is of use when it is nourished and tended to properly, to giving the Nyy'xai abilities like being able to read a person's innate nature and many other gifts.
Got it. All right, Ben, you're up on this next one. There are 3 ways that Nyy'xai often manage and channel their sensitivity.
There are many ways for the Nyy'xai to manage their sensitivity, and one of the most common forms is by gleefully binging on new ideas and high drama from every kind of media imaginable. Nyy'xai often enjoy collages of all sorts as a way of giving their sensitivity a playground area to gather and collect important thoughts and feelings. Another way Nyy'xai use their sensitivity to be productive is through all manner of artistic expression. Often Nyy'xai will use meditation or spiritual practice to calm, center, and channel their incredible sensitivity into higher states of consciousness.
When you're ready, take it down.
Is that considered 4 ways that are listed there?
It's 4, just pick 3.
Just pick okay. That's
I see. There are several ways that Nyy'xai like to manage their sensitivities. One of which is through collaging. They use the browsing various pieces of artwork and so forth, and that allows them to cross-contextualize and is a great output for their Ni and also their Zhai. They also like to binge on art forms and so forth. That they really enjoy, and that kind of gives them a sort of a playground to have fun with. And they also enjoy spiritual practice, such as meditation, allows them to channel their inner artistic their energy artistically, and also at what the Nyy'xai Center as well.
Good. Mitchell?
Right. So one of the ways that Nyy'xai often manage their sensitivity is by binging on new ideas and high drama, really, of any sort at all. Just kind of intaking a lot. And then another is through channeling it into artistic expression that runs the gamut of all sorts. And another way is through meditation or spiritual practice, where they can calm, center, and channel their sensitive energies into higher states of consciousness.
Ching. Glenn, take it home.
Hey, just one moment. All right, so 3 different ways in which the Nyy'xai handle and process and sort of channel their sensitivity are as follows. With one example being that they like to take in any sort of new ideas and of sort of like high drama from any kind of media that can be possibly taken in from any sort of like media outlet, any kind of thing imaginable. Another way is that Nyy'xai also enjoy very much collaging, and because it allows them to be able to sort of take their thoughts and feelings, and their very important thoughts and feelings, it gives them like this sort of playground area for them to like gather and sort of like understand all of those different aspects of themselves, and that's also very rewarding, and it allows them to process through their sensitivity as well. And thirdly, they also enjoy any kind of artistic expression as well, which can come in many different forms: music, painting, whatever it might be. There's also spiritual avenues as well that they can get into, finding their center and that kind of thing, which also helps them handle and channel their sensitivity.
Got it. All right. Next up, Mitchell, you'll take lead on this one. How does the Nyy'xai sensitivity relate to their psychological complexity? What are 3 ways this psychological complexity can frequently manifest?
The sensitivity of Nyy'xai is one of the main reasons they have such complex psychologies and find their own psyches confusing, which they can use as fuel to explore different fields of psychology and other disciplines that attempt to empirically quantify the human condition. As part of this complexity, Nyy'xai can have a highly reactive, rapidly changing attention focus that can at times be described as mercurial. There's also a moodiness that many Nyy'xai experience with deep lows and high peaks that can fluctuate wildly. Nyy'xai must also deal with the disorienting disconnect between the otherworldly ways of their momentum Nyy'xai and the worldly ways of their modulation Xi and Phi, would make it validated more on a regular basis. Okay. The Nyy'xai sensitivity relates to their psychological complexity because in a lot of ways it causes their psychological complexity, and it makes their psyche confusing in a way to navigate. So, and it can even make them want to like go into fields like psychology or just learn about it to try and understand complex psychologies in general better. And the three ways this psychological complexity manifests. Well, one of them is that Nyy'xai can have a rapidly changing and very highly reactive focus of attention, and it can seem very mercurial, both to themselves and others. And another one is that they often experience a moodiness that fluctuates wildly from deep lows to very high peaks. And last but not least, there is a disorienting disconnect between the ways of the momentum powers, their Nyy'xai, which are very spiritual and otherworldly, and the very worldly ways of their Z and Vi modulation powers. And the Z and Vi often get validated more on a regular basis, even though that's not necessarily what actually is feeding the Nyy'xai. So that can be disorienting and confuse them about themselves.
Good. Glenn?
Right, so the Nyy'xai, with their sensitivity and how it relates to them being very complex, it's actually very closely related, and it's one of the reasons why the Nyy'xai is so complex in nature and why they're so sensitive, is that they're they tend to be very psychologically complex. No, hold on. Let me just reword this. All right. So the Nyy'xai, their sensitivity is one of the main reasons for why they're so psychologically complex, and it can manifest in three different ways. I'll go over, which is psychology, for example. Nyy'xai tend to be very interested in psychology, and they just enjoy learning about the human condition and trying to come up with some kind of like an empirical way to understand everything through their Z, I suppose. And it's just something that they find rewarding, and it's one of the ways in which their complexity can manifest itself, I suppose you could say. Another way is through them being very mercurial and having a very, not a short attention span, but they tend to shift focus from one thing to another very quickly and very rapidly. And to other people, that can seem very like peculiar, and it can make the Nyy'xai seem like they're just very generally mercurial in nature. And that's also another way in which their psychological complexity can manifest itself. And lastly, I'll go over the fact that the Nyy'xai tend to have very, very deep and profound lows in their psychology, as far as like their mood swings and their moodiness and stuff. But then they can also experience very intense highs, where it's like very blissfully like vertigo. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's sort of like they tend to, go very, very far on being very happy, very sad, very joyous, very depressive, those kinds of natures and stuff. And I suppose one last one has to do with the fact that their Ni and their Zhai are very spiritual powers and very otherworldly and don't get acknowledged by the world at all, whereas their Z and their Vi is their modulation powers and so very scientific, and those tend to get very readily acknowledged. And noticing that very huge rift between their momentum and modulation sides causes them to have to, it's just something that they have to deal with, and one of the ways in which their complexity, psychological complexity, can manifest itself.
Good. Ben, take it home.
All right. The Nyy'xai sensitivity relates to their complex psychologies in the sense that their sensitivity is largely what makes their psychology so complex. It causes them to want to explore areas of the human condition that are quantifiable, such as the field of psychology, so that they can understand themselves better and so forth. One of the ways in which this manifests for them is that with their Ni, they can very quickly jump from idea to idea in such a way that it can seem mercurial to people. And similarly with the Nyy'xai, they can experience great mood swings from lowest lows to the highest peaks. In addition, the there's a great gulf between their momentum compound and their modulation compound, because with their modulation compound, those are the powers of the that they have consciously that are more on the lower end of the SS index, and thus receive more validation than their momentum powers, which are on the higher end, and thus they often have to work harder in a lot of different situations, in which case their modulation powers are being validated more, but they still need to fulfill the energetic needs of their peak pathway, and thus this creates a complex psychology.
Cool. Boom. All right, Glenn, you'll take lead on this next set. Cool. Go. How does the objective nature of the Nyy'xai relate to a sensitivity? How does being a gatherer, meaning stillness register first, relate to the Nyy'xai sensitivity? How does this affect the relationship Nyy'xai had with outside influences? How does this environmental sensitivity relate to Nyy'xai being able to see and accept their true natures?
All right, so despite being objective, Nyy'xai are easily overstimulated by uninteresting environment stimulus and find much of standard objective interactions boring and claustrophobic. Also, Nyy'xai are very sensitive to ambient toxicity in the environment, and when they pick up on it, they often feel it internally as anxiety. This necessitates that the Nyy'xai be selective with their environments, relationships, and activities that they partake of, so that they are drinking in and resonating with external influences that are healthy. The sensitivity to external stimulus is one of the major reasons Nyy'xai so commonly misread as being subjective in nature when they are in fact objective. Right, so despite the Nyy'xai being an objective mojo, they find much of the much of the stuff that they take in through their knee as being very overstimulate. They tend to interpret it as being overstimulating, and generally they find much of it to be just boring, and it makes them feel claustrophobic in nature. And this relates to their sensitivity because of that, but then also because of the fact that that's related to their objectivity, but them being gatherers, they're just naturally very receptive, and they take in things around them, and they have to be careful that they're not taking in sort of toxicity and any sort of negative influences from their environment and stuff like that. And so, as far as like Nyy'xai making sure that they don't let those kinds of things bother them, they need to make sure that they're very selective about the environments that they do put themselves in, making sure that the stimulus that they're taking in, the people that they're surrounding themselves with, are all very healthy, so that they maintain their personal integrity and their health, because they can easily become very overstimulated and over toxicified by their environments, especially since their unique powers of Nyy'xai are especially very sensitive to things around them, and tend to not be respected as much as as more of the literal powers and the logic-based powers, I suppose you could say. This relates to them and how they identify with themselves a great deal, because most of the time Nyy'xai tend to misread themselves as being subjective, but really they're objective mojos. It's just that they're very, very yin, and their Nyy'xai is very, very receptive and very, very sensitive in nature, and that can be seen as a very subjective kind of process, but it's just very yin. They're still objective mojos overall.
Got it. Ben, you're up next.
All right. Nyy'xai can very easily be overstimulated by objective interactions, and can often find them to be rather boring and claustrophobic. They also have to deal with the ambient toxicity that exists throughout the environment, and the Nyy'xai can often be turned off by this and can experience a great amount of anxiety because of it. And as a result, Nyy'xai will have to be selective of the encounters that they have with with the environment, and how they interact with it. And thus, for this reason, they often misread themselves as being subjective mojos when they are in fact objective. It's just the sensitivity makes them a bit of a trickier ship to navigate. And as a result, their objective interactions have to be more selective, and there's a difficulty modifier with that.
Mitchell?
So the objective nature of the Nyy'xai, particularly like as a Ni Alpha, they're going to find a lot of standard objective sort of environmental sort of stimuli to be uninteresting and claustrophobic, and being a gather stimulus register first affects their sensitivity, because they're just very sensitive to ambient toxicity that their Ni, which is also flavored with Zhai, picks up in the environment and drinks in and resonates with. And this means that the Nyy'xai need to be selective about choosing the environments that they partake in, the kind of activities and influences, so that what they drink in and resonate with is healthy and maintains their inner harmony. Because of this sensitivity that they have, based on a lot of other models out there, Nyy'xai can commonly misread as being subjective or some kind of like introversion sort of correlate, because they end up spending a lot of time away from people, or doing more unusual sorts of things. But that's not really what that means. It's just that when they actually understand really how their sensitivity works, they'll be able to understand how it is actually showing their particular kind of objective nature.
Nice. All right, last bit. You will lead off, Ben.
All right.
There it is. Okay. How does the sensitivity of the Nyy'xai influence how they carry themselves in general? What kind of aura does this create? How does this relate to their sense of humor? And how does the sensitivity of the Nyy'xai relate to the sensitivities of others?
All right. Nyy'xai have a special way about them because they listen and dance to unseen forces and subtle feelings, as they are constantly in a state of being teased by mysteries and moved with inexpressible emotion. There is an aura of idyllic harmony that Nyy'xai carry with them wherever they go, as their sensitivity has a magical, sacred quality to it that it gifts to the rest of the world. Often, Nyy'xai use their offbeat sense of humor as a vehicle for their sensitivity's whimsical ways. Ironically, the Nyy'xai warm gather sensitivity is extremely helpful in handling the sensitivities of others, most notably the warm hunter sensitivity of the Nyy'xai, the other mojo that completes the Nyy'xai's story. Hey coach, what does idyllic mean?
Idyllic?
Yeah.
It means basically an idealized existence.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Like ideal. It's just that the Y and the L kind of like makes it look weird.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Like charming. Charming, pleasant.
Nyy'xai have a special way about them that causes them to move and dance to uh, uh, unseen mysteries and emotion of natural law. Um, this effectively creates an aura around them that wherever they go, whenever people are in their presence and so forth, they will be moved by this and impacted by this aura of idyllic harmony, which they will be able to, the Nyy'xai will be able to gift to others, and they'll spread that energy. Nyy'xai can often use their offbeat sense of humor as a vehicle for their sensitivities and a way to channel them. Um, and in addition, the great sensitivities that the Nyy'xai possesses allows them to understand the sensitivities of others better, and thus helps them with their sensitivities, and there's another heroic purpose for it.
Good. Mitchell?
Alright. The sensitivity of the Nyy'xai, hearing feedback. It's kind of like. Sorry. Still. Yeah, I'm hearing feedback. I think it's from you, Coach.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, I just made this striking. Sorry. Anyway, the sensitivity, the Nyy'xai carry themselves in a way as if they were listening and dancing to unseen forces, and that is because they carry themselves away because of their sensitivity. It makes it so that they are constantly being teased by mysteries and being touched with emotion that is difficult to express and give form to. It gives them, in turn, an aura of idyllic harmony that they carry around, with them in the world and pretty much everything that they do. And as really also just one of the gifts of their sensitivity, and it relates to their sense of humor because it necessitates that sense of humor be offbeat and whimsical in a way, as it helps them deal with their sensitivity and channel it, just like some of the many other ways we talked about that they channel their sensitivities before. And in particular, their sensitivity helps them to understand and empathize with the sensitivities of other people, especially their counterpart in the Nyy'xai story, the warm hunter sensitivity of the Nyy'xai.
Yep, that does it. Nice. Glenn, take it home.
All right. Right, so the Nyy'xai have a very special way about them, given that their sensitivity causes them to carry themselves with this magical sort of energy where they are constantly in a state of dancing and listening to the mysterious mysteries all around them, and they're constantly also being moved by them as well, in a way where it's very difficult for them to describe the sort of emotions that they're going through and they're feeling. Naturally, this creates an aura for the Nyy'xai as well, this idyllic sort of aura that's very sensitive and also related to their Zhai poignancy as well, and it makes them. It's a very special kind of aura because it's something that they are naturally just always exuding, and it's something that they're constantly giving out as a gift to the rest of the world as well. Their sensitivity also relates to their sense of humor because they tend to have very interesting and very offbeat sense of humors, and it's related to their sensitivity because it's how they sort of use they use humor in a sense as a vehicle to be able to understand and funnel their sensitivity out more according to like a way that feels more natural to them, and it can come across as being very whimsical and very odd and kind of peculiar in a sense. But it's something that they use in order to understand their sensitivity in general, and it's a very special kind of a thing that anyone can do, but Nyy'xai have a specific form of it. And other than that, they interestingly enough, it's kind of ironic. Nyy'xai are very, very sensitive, but this also gives them the ability to be able to relate to and understand the sensitivities of other people in a similar way that I think, in comparison to like the Nyy'xai, because the Nyy'xai are also very, very sensitive too, and that gives them a lot of insights into being able to understand the sensitivities of other people, because they can sort of note that that person is going through the same kind of thing, even when they don't even realize it themselves. And Nyy'xai are the same way, but they're more adaptive, so they're more in terms of responding to sort of like the states that other people are in, and then sort of using their Ni and their Zhai to navigate those kinds of motifs accurately and correctly. And their ability to use their sensitivity is also very strongly good at being able to understand the sensitivities of the Nyy'xai specifically, because they're related to the same storyline that they are, which is the Nyy'xai.
Got it. Boom. Alrighty, 2 pitches down. Nice job, team. All right, we're gonna say bye to the world for a while, but we're gonna stick around and do a little music jamming. Okay. See you, world.
Bye,
More
everyone.
Fundamentals next time.